Right, Wildflower's painting. Just get myself comfy. I wanted to paint some wildflowers. They'd been all springing up in the meadows and looking lovely. So I went and got myself a photograph and printed it out, and then took an old canvas that wasn't very good, flipped it round, painted it blue for some reason instead of the magenta colour. I can't remember why. I'm coming back to this video about 5 weeks after painting the piece. I've just been a little sidetracked with some bits and pieces over the past month, so I'm only just getting around to the editing. As you can see, I started the piece similar to the St. George's Park one that I'd painted. So I've gone in with paint pens and done a really basic sketch there. Try to highlight a couple of grasses and a couple of flowers, and then build in some sketch work in and just kind of trying to imply where the line's going to be, and something to build on top of. And once I'd finished with the paint pens, I come in with the ink. It's obviously really thin, and they let me just work very quickly, very fast line, just trying to build up. I work in the blue, so obviously the darks. I work in a pure blue, a pure green, and I believe a pure magenta in a bit. As you can see, I'm just working on top of the previous sketch. I'm just trying to be very loose and just create a bit more depth. Trying to sketch out where I want some of the colour to be in the final stages. Here I've switched to acrylics, I believe. I think I had a very deep blue-green mixed up, and then a very light green mixed up. I was just working between the two, on top of the blue inks. I also had a blue acrylic, I believe, which I was going in and just doing some very strong line work with. This cut here was, I think, an hour of painting. I left the camera running. I've cut down quite a bit, but this is my wee dog. She got into a toy box that night. I think it was her birthday, so it was the 10th of June. Because she slept in it. That was her making a bed. She'd spent about half an hour in there. And then she came back about 10 minutes later and got into it and slept there for about 3 hours. And back to the big room. That was about 2 in the morning. So I got a glove on here, a rubber glove, because I was using oil paint sticks. So they're not oil pastels, they're like big chalks, and you have to cut the outside layer off, which hardens like a fruit. It's like a banana, so you gotta peel it like a banana, and then the fruit's just this like big glorious load of paint in the shape of a stick. So you just wipe it on, you just use it like a big crayon. That was pretty cool. And I think I've got a green one and a blue one. I was using them too. And it was just going in really strong on the line. Plus this is the first oil layer. So everything else previously was dried. And this was the first layer that was going to stay wet and influence the further layers. So the idea was to go from paint pens to acrylic inks to acrylic paints to these oil stick things, then to oil paint. So it was kind of building on the idea that I'd done in that St. George's piece, which was the previous video on my channel. Trying to just utilise mixed media. Also, I was running out of some supplies. I'd be right skint, so it was just a case of using some old stuff that I had from the miniature painting world. Little tiny bottles of paint. And it was a super warm week. And now I've done a piece since this one. I did a massive one on the back of my dog passing away. I did that entirely in acrylic, but I didn't film any of that one. I only took final photos and little bits and pieces throughout. So it's been interesting using the different medias, especially in terms of building a sketch. The oil paints, they have a freedom with them in that they can stay wet for a few days and be very workable for a few days, and in the session they're workable. But if you're not very, I suppose, bold with the colour choices that you use, or you're not quite sure about where you want to be, it can quickly veer into tertiaries and kind of muddy areas without the clarity that you wanted. You'll see that later actually on the flowers. I didn't really set what I wanted to do with them properly, and I ended up going over them and over them and over them multiple times. Eventually scraping the paint away to reapply, because I was just getting to a point of almost getting lost without the clarity of the sketch. So working in acrylics and inks and things in mediums that dry quick, it's almost like the sketch can be done in a way that's, it builds up very naturally from kind of, really low opacity. The lines build, you pick which lines you want, very much like making just a pencil sketch. And here I've switched to the oils and brush. So this is now just working direct on the canvas with the oil paint, as usual, traditional style with a brush. The wax crayon things, the oil sticks, they stay wet on the canvas as well, so I'm working into that. You'll see how I slowly start to kind of bring in that mid-green that I used, which is quite bright, and working from that, it meant I could either tone it back into the blues and the shadows quite nicely, or I could bring it up into a yellower, more sunlit tone of the green. I like this part of the painting because it was the kind of main colour focus of it showed itself, and it was this like bright yellow green, not very desaturated, very bold. Very sunlit, but not necessarily warm. Just a very bright day, bright clear day, like we get up in the northeast of England in the minute. It's not particularly warm, it's not Spain or Italy, but we're having these super bright, colourful days, which is, bringing out all these colours of the meadows and the wildflowers that have been growing over the past couple of months. was trying to work with very opaque lines here. Every layer that I'd put on throughout the mediums, reaching up to this layer, kind of like strengthened the opacity of what I was working with. So the end result has almost a very thick impasto layer of paint over the entire canvas, no matter where you look, which is kind of stopping the light shining through to the older layers. So you get very opaque, very bold, very vibrant colour space, colours, where the light is, you know, the light that's hitting your eye and paint is very, it's that colour and that colour alone. And then the mix in between the yellow and blue to gain the green creates that kind of shift where your eyes are picking up a kind of yellow-green tone, a yellow-blue tone, a blue-green tone, and they're kind of shifting around. I'd initially wanted the 3, 4, 5 little flowers toward the centre of the piece to be these kind of little magenta little bud things that were growing, and they're only tiny. And then I realised as I was painting that I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to really lean into this yellow green, and the flower on the left hand side of the piece was always intended to be this yellow little daisy type thing. So I made a few adjustments which you'll see quite soon, and basically just changing the colour space of the flowers until I was happy with what I wanted and what I saw. And like I said earlier, scraping all the paint away and then almost restarting that section. Here I'm just blocking the sky, and I chose to do the sky, and I kept all the strokes vertical to match the blades of grass, the direction of that paint. Usually I paint skies in horizontal. Now there is a difference, because horizontal and vertical paint reflects light slightly different because of the way the brush strokes are left. So having the sky doing this vertical thing kind of visually creates a match on the finish of the piece. I also erased the trees that I had in the top left corner. I can't remember why. I have a feeling I might not have mixed the right colour at any point, and I couldn't quite achieve the atmospheric distance that I wanted, which was throwing the perspective off slightly. So I just skied them out, added a few extra grasses, and then it was just really a case of boldening that colour choice. Here I am going over those flowers, just trying to get kind of proof of concept. So I'd changed the colour of them a few times over. I'd gone with a blue, I'd tried using those oil stick things. I was trying to like shift the colour on the canvas by just adding stuff and adding more paint and adding more paint, and it wasn't until I saw kind of what I wanted, and not only what I wanted but how I wanted to achieve them with the brush strokes and the shape of them and the overall finish. And once I kind of set those colours in, as you can see there's one on the right there which is blue. I tested blue out and it just was too cool, even though I wanted a cool yellow, a bright cool yellow in the green space. It was a little bit too blue. Yeah, I can't really explain very well. It was a case of matching that yellow colour space. And then here I am with the palette knife, just basically scraping all that paint off from those sections, just so I could start again without as much paint on the canvas influencing what was going on top. And I didn't have to work in quite as impasto. I mean, I could just build up with some thin layers first. But when you think that the kind of like the grasses and things around them had maybe 8-9 passes of different mediums and layers, it takes a while for the flowers to kind of like match that depth, because what I'm doing here really is just putting very flat colour on again, and then so you get these sections that look completely separate from the painting until I do a lot of work kind of building up colour on them. I put some pinks into them, I put some blues into them. I think I even go as far as kind of getting into the red scale, the red side of the colour wheel. And it was all just to give them this kind of like, I suppose, 3-dimensional aspect. But I was kind of happy by the end. The one bit I wasn't super pleased with, but there's always something that you're not super pleased with. And for me, it was the flowers on this one. I like the big one on the left. I like the little tiny bud toward the bottom right corner. I just wasn't happy with the 5 in the centre. But that's probably because I didn't have a solid plan for them as I was working the piece up, and I always knew I wanted to change them and I didn't know what to or whatever. But once I'd set that yellow, which you can see now, that kind of yellow with the reds and the oranges on the underside, I feel like it matched the rest of the colour space of the painting quite well. And then it was just a case of going in, adding some greens, little leaves, adding a few details, deepening the contrast, and then getting to the stage where I'm just working again with pure colour out of the tube. So I'm back to the direct cobalt blue. I'm almost at a pure cadmium yellow. I think I had to knock this back a little bit. Cadmium yellow is very, very bright. It's a very bright yellow. So you usually need to work it back slightly just to make it look a little bit more natural. I'm just doing a few reworks on the sky. Make sure everything kind of either blends in or sticks out. What do I mean by that? Whether the edge is slightly soft or whether the edge is hard, I suppose. Whether it sticks out on the landscape, or does it against the sky, or does it soften against the sky? So obviously things in the distance slightly softer, things in the foreground a bit crisper. And then he is just developing the shape of the flowers, going in with shade, really dark colour, heavy impasto by this point, and just keep them going until I'm happy with the look of them, which I was never going to be 100% happy with them. But we're good enough for me. And that's about the process of the wildflowers. Fun piece to do, working on developing the mixed media. A bit more of a fluid underpainting based on opacity, using the inks and acrylics. But it was a good little project. I thought I was about done. I'd like wrapped up my chat there, waiting for the reveal, and I'm not done, am I? I can't quite see what I'm doing. I'm just fannying on. So I just add more dark lines. You get to a point where you just keep adding dark lines until things stick out, pop right, read right. Hey, there we go. And now the reveal. Dun 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 dun. Wildflowers. Woo, look at that. Wildflowers. Wildflowers in the sun. In me backyard. Reveal. See you next time.